Alright, Annex to Memorandum of Understanding between the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Transportation roles responsibility concerning with the railroad security. Agreement the Annex Memorandum of Understanding between the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Transportation roles responsible the date of the September 28, 2004 party ending with the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Transportation with the Department of Homeland Security, agency responsible for carrying with the Annex, the Transportation Security Administration, agency with the primary responsible for carrying over the Annex of the Federal Railroad Administration, Office of Intelligence Security Emergency Response, over the Office of the Activity Designated Official with the identified with the various section of the Annex official included with the designating authority. Department of Homeland Security Annex Title 49 U.S. Code 106M 114M of the Homeland Security Act of the 2000 Public Law Number 107-296 116 Statute 2135 2178 Intelligence Reform Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004 Public Law Number 108 458 178 Statute 3638 Homeland Presidential Directive Number 7 December 17, 2003 Critical Infrastructure Identification Prioritization Protection Homeland Security Presidential Directive Number 8 December 17, 2003 National Preparedness and the Direction of Security, Homeland Security, the TSA with the primary authority to develop the national strategy with the transportation security into the annex pursuant to Title 49 U.S. Code 301 and Title 49 U.S. Code Chapter 51, 201 through 213 HSBD 7. All terms annexed up here with a memorandum of understanding the means using the memorandum of understanding except for the otherwise provided with word of the annex and the manner with a consistent interpretation of the memorandum of understanding. Purpose of the parties of the annex with the mutual interest, the ensure and coordinate with a consistent effect with the activities potential with the material effect with the respect of the management purpose to annex to delineate clear lines authority responsible to ensure the collaboration between the parties of the area of the passenger freight railroad the security between the extinguished legal authority the core competency achieve the purpose of the parties agreed about in term annex subject to the applicable federal law regulation presidential record of the relevant policies background United States Railroad Network vital net with the national transportation for the critical economic national defense public health of the Amtrak community with the railroads provide with the passenger rail service for more than 500 million passengers yearly. 40% of all the intercity feature freight measure of the 2-ton miles move with the rail, including 64% of the coal with electrical utility with the produced power with over 1.7 million shipments ahead of the material with the ship the rail annually include with the material that could be used with the acting public's toxic inhalation ahead of the material with the flame of the liquid gas explode with the radiological material with the poisonous material with the maintaining safety of the railroad transportation safety and essential in accordance with the Homeland Security Act, the HSBD 7 DHS and holds the lead authority primary responsibility to dedicate with the research of the security activity to all modes of the transportation, including rail, pursuant to the Aviation Transportation Security Act, specifically as delegation of the Secretary of the Homeland Security, of the TSA, with the acts of the lead federal entity with the transportation security, generally with the rail security, but in particular with the FAA authority with the over every railroad safety, including security with the CL 49 CFR 149, with the term railroad means all form of the non-highway ground transportation run on rail with electromagnetic guideways included with the commuter rail with the short haul of the rail passengers with the metropolitan, suburban, and as well with the commuter rail with the service cooperative with the Consolidated Rail Corporation on January 1st, 1979, to the high-speed ground transportation system with the connecting mountain metropolitan area with regard to the weather with the new technology associated with the traditional railroad with the term railroad is not to with the rapid transit operation urban area with the not connected to the general railroad system transportation Title C, Title 49 CFR Part 209, Appendix A, FRA Administrative with the Federal Railroad Safety Administrative Laws, issue enforcement of substantial body safety regulation, investigate with the railroad accident incident with the has the authority to address the emergency situation, have the death and injury with the railroad industry with the FRA enforce federal hazmat material laws regulation, the pipeline hazmat material safety administration. National Freight Passenger Railroad ships at the system that the Department of Homeland Security has been enforcing, enhancing the security of the system and the draft of the valid regional and national level threat. One of the memorandums of the annex made with the clear with the FRA, with the TSA, with the coordinator, with the program initiative, with the order, with the better, with the with the railroad shipper, with the prior to with addressing currently emergency security needs related. THF with the FRA reckoning on the PHMS believe with the integral role of the hazmat material safety and security with the DHS and with the TSA with the PHMS rules responsibly outlined in separate annexes. Coordinated planning, inspection, training with the enforcement activity, development, and strategy for the further enhancing the railroad security with the party within the annex place with the high value with the communication with between themselves, with the commit themselves with the endeavor, coordinate maximum extent practicable with the program and activity, improve the passenger with the freight railroad security with the United States with the minimize the disruption of the railroad operation extent practical. Coordinated meetings and with the regular coordinated evidence of the memorandum with the annex parties agree with the whole coordinated meetings necessary with the headquarter level, the regional office to discuss coordinating training with the field inspector inspect with the coordinating inspection enforcement action respective of the inspector to minimize disruption of the needs to be inspected, minimize utilization in inspector resources, ensure the party will provide consistent information rail industry security matters for the safety matter security implications, ensure the party for the take and consistent enforcement action violation federal law regulation party saying their use and appropriate enforcement tools to address security related problems emerging security items based on the intelligence indicated with such out of the manners warranted with the interpretation parties pursuing effective mission necessitated operational environment emergency circumstances of other contingencies. Inspector of the FRA with the TSA with the daily deploy inspector of the task with the ensure the accomplishment of the respect with the ND with the mission and the compliance with the respect with the regulatory routine with the extent practical the agent with the coordinate with the inspection activities leverage knowledge expertise to avoid duplication have the minimize the demands of the stakeholder. TSA inspectors hold the lead authority responsible for conducting security inspection and review with the ensure the compliance with the TSA with the transportation requirement identify with the security gap develop and prepare with the security with the best practices monitoring stay with the awareness readiness throughout the rail mode. TSA inspector does not initiate with the conduct safety inspection will refer to the significant safety problems of the preserved with the FRA preserved paragraph sub 6 of this section. FRA inspectors hold the lead authority responsible for conducting safety inspection railroad freight passenger operations, ensuring the safety compliance, providing safety guidance information. Stakeholder the FRA inspector to conduct hazardous material security. The inspector compliant with the security with the regulation inspection requested. THSA accordance to paragraph 5 of the section 10 below, but the FRA inspector will refer to significant security problems observed with the TSA with the paragraph 6 of the section. TSA with the FRA with agreed to develop a particular review of the amended standard operating procedure with the operating requirements of the factor one of the parties also agreed to ensure the inspection activity effective with the cause of the minimal disruption and stakeholder of the operation. FRA would inspect with the needed support with the TSA security efforts for the time when they have elevated security threat with during and after an event with the FRA make every effort to provide with the necessary support. See section 10 and 11D below. Rules. TSA inspector with the obvious significant rail safety issue with the TSA with immediately notify the appropriate TSA with the point of contact with the relay information FRA with the safety issue with the required with immediate action. Attention to TSA with the first report of the provided proper railroad authority. Then the TSA point of contact the FRA inspector with the obvious significant security issue. FRA inspector with immediately notify with the appropriate FRA point of contact to with the relay with the TSA with the security issue with the requires immediate attention to the FRA inspector with the report of the proper railroad authority with the FRA point of contact. FRA will continue with the TSA with the information major railroad action with the crisis manager center with during the course of the conduct of the railroad incident investigation, accident investigation. FRA suspect with the incident may have the developed call with the FRA immediately TSA with the provide access with the relevant information cooperative to TSA inspector with the other personnel deployed investigated incident section 7 below. Point of contact manager for the regulated coordinating schedule meeting. Point of contact the director of transportation infrastructure security policy, the director of surface transportation security inspection program, director of office of intelligence security emergency response, and FRA director of office security assurance and compliance. Critical vulnerability assessment and the security reviews. Presumably HPSD 7 of the Department of Homeland responsible for coordinating national effort to identify with the enhanced protection critical infrastructure for the key resource and the Department of Homeland Security meets responsible lead federal entity to conduct the critical vulnerability assessment, monitoring and assessing of the threat of the transportation system and the developing risk manager-based countermeasure and enhance security to deter attacks and minimize the vulnerability potential consequence of the taking the attack action with the Railroad Department of Homeland TSA with the developer pursue with the impact with the facility with the operation rail passenger freight car with the rail shipper with the Department of Homeland Security with the F with the FRA with the agree to provide compliance data with the drive the security inspection of the review security plan required under Title 49 CFR 172 800 active with the rail car rail shipper to the FRA provide with the TSA with the general manager of the freight railroad security Department of Homeland Security the TSA according to the FRA with the observation recommended the manager of the derive with the result of the critically vulnerability assessment to ensure that they do not conflict adversely affect with the current and planned safety requirements responsible during an emergency background when the parties enforce the extent of the emergency response procedures already placed on address the respect of the responsible event with emergency these responsibly incompetent with the national response plan associated with the National Incident Management System pursuant to the Homeland President's Social Security Act number 5 February 28, 2003 management of domestic into the HSPD, Flag Security, Homeland Security, Principal Federal Office of Domestic Incident Management, Emergency Support Function, Transportation, Number 1, National Response Plan, DOT, Primary Agency, Transportation, Emergency, end of the ESFA, Number 1, DOT, with the responsible emergency management, transportation system, coordinated with the ELSIN and transportation services, restoration, recovery, transportation, infrastructure, the other transportation, sharing information during an emergency with the point of contact for the DOT, receiving the distribution of information incident during the emergency, providing situational awareness, transportation of the DOT, critical management center with the point of the DHF, the receiver, the distributing information of the emergency impact with the rail security, the TSA, with the Transportation Security Operations Center, and the Department of Homeland Security, the National Operations Center, set forth in Section 6 of the FRA lead role of the investigation rail accident report, coordinated with the accident with the CMC, determined that the incident had been deliberately caused by the annex partly do not intend to establish for the emergency response period for the head of the particular parties acknowledge for the annex both for the requirement of the timely information during an emergency, with themselves impromptly sharing information on the emergency situation implicated with the mission of the interest of the other party, information context include with the incident, initial incident report, ongoing information, incident development, the timely sharing of the information serve the public interest of the operation, security, and safety of the national rail system. Each party requires information to perform respective role of the respondent to the incident, include the declaration, federal resource, the coordinated with the other forms of the system of the advising White House and federal agencies necessary. Communication intelligence, including threats, warning, decision, protective measures of the rail industry stakeholder, the communication threat, the DHF, the responsible communicating intelligence, threat, and warning for the change of the Department of the Homeland Security Advisory System, the condition, time and base of the DOT, railroad industry stakeholder, the DOT, effort of the area, the FRA, the OISR, coordinate with the Department of Homeland Security, the DOT, responsible for the commission, and communicate with the intelligence, with the threat, with the warning promptly with the TSO and the NOC, communication, protective measure for the effect of the organization, pursuing the joint interest of the highest state of the security, with awareness, for the Department of Homeland Security, control of the DOT, private dissemination, security requirement, including regulation or with the security directive, volunteer standard guidelines to the public. Additional DOT will control of the Department of Homeland Security, private disseminating safety requirements, including regulation or with volunteer standard guidelines, impact security to the public. And we have points of contact for the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Transportation, Infrastructure, Security Policy, TSA, Freight Rail, General Manager, Freight Rail, Security Passenger Rail, General Manager, Transit Passenger Rail, Security, OSC, the Director of Office and Intelligence Security, Emergency Response, FRA, the Director of Office Security and Assurance and Compliance. 9. Soliciting, receiving, and considering input with the railroad security matters. Each of the party or organized timely input with the party with the benefit of the party with the decision of the railroad security man with the Section 5A with the Department of Homeland Security with the DOT memorandum of security with the state with the party place high value with the regular timely with the full communication between themselves, the commitment themselves, the control of the strong communication links to with the other action parties also committed themselves with the coordinate with the maximum extent of the practical of the program activities and activities include the railroad security with the United States with the moreover the Department of Homeland Security lead role of the railroad security man with the TSA with the timely input of the FRA decision, should the FRA with the decision either with the conform with the Department of Homeland Security. TSA will provide with either child with the relay opportunity versus for the conference call with the general meeting with the railroad industry for take over the control of the security with the related man with the communication with the DOT pursuing the paragraph with the will be some of the OSR when the FRA with the Director of Office Security concerns compliant communicate with the Department of Homeland Security with the paragraph with the TSA with the general manager with the FRA security with the TSA with the general manager transit passenger railroad rail security appropriate. To gain benefit with the opportunity to timely input with the partners, parties designated with the official of the listed below with the point comprehensive prospect the sub of the committee with the providing evidence notice of planning action and exemption of the emergency requirement of the immediate action which will call the parties to consult with as earlier time. The permanence of the parties will provide with the notice of the time when the other party shall have a genuine input adequate time review typical during the development phase of the action, contemplate the regulation order of the directive of the team of the guidelines and call of the memorandum and stream of the will yearly effective the frequent coordinate for the developed regulation of the requirements for the order of the directive that includes secure the directives, guidelines stream of the effect of the rail, secure the most case for the TSA with the action of the FRA with the opportunity to provide the FRA will have the same obligation to consult with the TSA such as the proposal action relevant to the rail security including safety measures, security implementation of the parties recommended with the emergency of the other existing circumstance of the procurement of the three of the coordinated the prior of the dissemination of the type of the measure of the parties will over the coordinated extensively circumstantial all of the review action taken necessary. TSA point of contact, TSA, the Deputy Chief of the Council of the Regulation, FRA point of contact, FRA Assistant Chief Counsel, Safety Law Division, legislation and testimony for the matter of the impact of the railroads with the parties for the consult with each other with the reasonable practical with the draft bills with the developing comments of the bill with the draft testimony briefing before the congressional body with the answer for the question with the record with the TSA point of contact, TSA Legislative Council, FRA point of contact, FRA Assistant Chief Counsel, Safety Law Division, Public statement of the press release for the non publication for the matter impact for the rails, give the priority for the control of each other with the extent of the reasonable proactive with the public statement of the press release for the publication prior to the issue of the TSA with the point contact TSA Assistant Director of Strategic Communication Public Affairs with the FRA point contact with the FRA Director of Public Affairs. Reached over the development of the part with control of the reach of the railroads, give the related demand for the conducting response for the including long-term planning with the proposal of the security, secure with the related technology, rail transportation, Department of Homeland Security, contact with the TSA, Chief of Supporting Officer with the state local government, coordinate with the Preparation System Support Division, Director, FRA, point of contact with the FRA, Deputy Assistant, associated with the Ministry of the Railroad Development. Other types of the party will generally control the appropriate time prior to the final action, all of the term project affecting the railroad security involved with the safety management of the security implication, TSA point of contact, TSA General Manager, Freight Railroad Security, TSA General Manager, Transit, Passenger Rail Security, that point of contact, except for the matter with the otherwise specified the annex, FRA, Director of the Office of Security, answer for the security assurance and compliance. Use of the personal and or resource parties recommend that each of the extent of the circumstance of the other contingency make tax available to security resource of these situations. The Department of Homeland Security with the resource of the FRA with the personal and other aspects. The Department of Homeland has determined support necessary to develop, support, self-implement, enforce railroad security regulatory order directive with the plan programs of the measures conduct security with the reviews during the period of evaluated the security threat. The Department of Homeland Security requests decision of the FRA in writing, electronic mail, appropriate form, written communication for the requirement. The request must be sent with the FRA as soon as practical with the Department of Homeland Security determines the need. With the circumstances, the Department of Homeland Security should make the request at least 30 days prior to the day of the decided the FRA personnel with the reach for the request should be direct with the FRA Director, Office of Security and Safety Assurance and Compliance will respond as writing as soon as possible whether the FRA able to provide the requested reach for the FRA agree with the provide personal reach for the party with the authorized to establish terms, condition, agreement, arrangement with a separate written agreement with a reinforce of the annex reimbursement parties becoming the issue with the connection with the arrangement and with the section 11D below as applies. Severability with nothing in the annex with an intent with the delta with a conflict with the statutory provision regulation or with the direct with the Department of Homeland TSA with the FRA with the other federal agency within the provision and if the supplement thereto with the inconsistent statutory provision invalid and to the extent such of the inconsistent remainder of the provision, all of the provision, term, condition, and if the supplement thereto with the remaining full force of the effect. Right and benefit of the nothing in the annex intent with the diminution of the wise authority, the agency care of the statutory, regulatory, other functional, official function with the intent of the right with the benefit, substantive of the procedure with the enforced law, into the equity with the party with the United States, the Department of Agency, officer with the employee with the agency with the officers carrying out programs authorized federal law and any other person. With the period agreement with the termination annex effect with the day with the final signature of the parties with the remaining effect with terminated with the FRA TSA or TSA with either with the FRA or TSA with the terminated annex supplement thereto the 90 days written news of the respective on the contact list in section N5F. 9-5 therein. Reimbursement, subsequent agreement that each of the parties responsible for the other will expend with a further date with the party desire to address the issue of the reimbursement regarding the particular activity refer with the meeting and subject with the reimbursement with the other party with the incur the expense with the related to his activity and event with the parties will meet promptly with determine the reimbursement addressed with a separately agreement not at all with the in such reimbursement and accord with the provision of the economy with the applicable authority the applicable agency pursue the party with the seeking reimbursement such reimbursement and not safe for the outcoming such meeting is declared with the provide party reason for the wish of the desired reimbursement. Exchange and keep the contact information for 30 days of the effect of the day with agreement that every person listed on the point contact party with the annex should provide each of the other point of contact listed party the following information: full name, title, the telephone number, the full address, the telephone number, all persons serving the point contact provided that any of the person acting with the person, all along with the necessary information of the points of the contact subject of the person occupying the position, point of contact, and exchanges any of the information person immediate provided with new information, other affected points of contact. Amendment modification. Add with addition of the material that specifically covered the annex of the party. Identify with additional matter with the related railroad security specifically include with the annex of the party with the require for the annex amended with the according with the party with the meet with the discuss attached with the amendment. It would agree with the amendment and the modification must be in writing and execute with appropriate res by presuming the TSA with the FRA. If it's approved by Transportation Security Administration, Kip Howley, Federal Railroad Administration, Joseph H. Boardman. And that was the last of that.